Hey there, it's Joy Foster, founder of Tech Pixies and host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And I'm doing something unique and different. For a little while, I am going to focus on some fly solo podcasts. Now, I haven't done fly solo podcasts in a long time. And a big part of that has to do with the fact that I feel super comfortable interviewing other people. Makes my job a lot easier. But I think it's time to start sharing some insights and some wisdom and some experience and mistakes that I've made over the years to help you on your journey to whatever that might be. Maybe you want to return to work after having a career break, looking after your family. Maybe you want to change careers. Maybe you want to start a business, right? I mean, I talk to a lot of women who post-pandemic feel like starting a business is the right thing. For the flexibility and also the technical opportunity that just did not exist prior to really the 2020. I mean, there were not as many opportunities to work flexibly then as there are now. And also the tech that allows us to work remotely and flexibly is way better. And the ability to build a business without actually ever meeting your clients in person is actually possible in a way that it did not exist a couple years ago. So what do I mean by this? Well, when I was starting out in the social media world, I did in-person training. I also did social media for clients, and I built websites for clients. And really, in most cases, I would only work with people who I was in the same area of, so that I could meet with them face to face and go through things together and then build a website. Now, that's still possible. You can still build a very localized business, which is an amazing thing to do, because once you have a reputation in an area, that builds and people recommend you to other people. But you can also build a reputation online. And one of the best ways to build a reputation online is with your social media. And I'm a huge fan of social media in getting women to get themselves out there. It builds massive amounts of confidence. If you've never done a live video before and you've done our self-paced bootcamp, which you can find out more at techpixies.com/bootcamp, we encourage you to go live on your feeds. We show you exactly how to do that. And going live is very scary, but it's also one of those things that once you've done it, you just get better and better and better at it. So I'll give you an example of this. In my church, there's this amazing woman named Alice Lawhead, and she is doing the Camino de Santiago trail right now. And Alice is older than me, so I'm 42, and Alice is probably, I don't want to give it away, but she's probably at least one decade, maybe possibly a little bit more than that, older than me. But one of the things that she's doing while she's on the Camino is on a daily basis, or almost daily, she is putting a live video in her feed and sharing the Camino de Santiago with us, with those of us who love her and love Christ and want to, go on that journey with her. And she's pointing out all sorts of, insights and reflections. And I just think it's super cool, right? And that is someone who, maybe the first time she went live, she was scared to go live. But after she started sharing her insights from the Camino, she got so much positive reinforcement from people, she just kept going, right? I mean, I'm making a lot of assumptions here because she's still on the Camino and I can't ask her. But I do know that you can use social media for so many different things. One of those is sharing your experience of life with the world. And that's an important thing to do, because all of us have our own lens on life. We all have the thing that makes us tick. And we're going to connect with people who are like-minded. And we may have the opportunity in connecting with them to enhance their life. I was reminded this morning of being a person of increase and how that's one of the most important factors to being successful. And what does that mean? What is a person of increase? Well, a person of increase is someone that makes everyone's day around them better, right? You walk into a room, you bring an energy and a presence and a smile that connects and uplifts. And it's a genuinely beautiful, wonderful thing to learn how to do. And we must learn how to do this. We must learn how to be people of increase. The tricky thing is when things are not going great in your life, sometimes it feels hard to be a person of increase. And I get that. I totally get that. And one of the things I used to say to my kids when they were little, and I still say it to them, is act the way you want to feel. Act the way you want to feel. And we all have moments where things are tough and where things aren't going the way we want them to go. But we have complete control over our response to that, right? And so I think the key here is learning how to respond rather than to react. And as we do different things, in life, we get opportunities, many opportunities to respond rather than react. And one of the ways that we can get better at this is through reflection. And this is another key piece of social media. And I think, one is getting up the courage to do things that you've never done before, right? I mean, Jennifer Allwood says in her book, Fear is Not the Boss of You, that confidence comes from doing things you've never done before and then realizing you didn't die. And I love that, right? And when you do a live video on social media, you will feel like you're going to die. But guess what? Unless you are literally on the edge of a cliff trying to do a selfie and not paying attention to where you are, chances are you're going to be just fine, right? So, and also don't do selfies in cars, right? Please don't do selfies in cars. But there is some safety around doing selfies. But on the whole, hitting the record button on your phone, you are going to be totally fine. And you are not going to die. And that's important to know, because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And that is really the concept of why I love social media for women in confidence, because they do things that they've never done before, and they gain massive amounts of confidence in doing that. One is with lives, the other could be in creating creative assets for in Canva. So you may not know Canva. More and more I find people do know Canva, but if you don't know Canva, you can grab our guide at techpixies.com/Canva. You can get started on Canva. And one of the things you can get started on Canva with is creating a vision board. And that'll teach you a lot of the elements of Canva, how to add text, how to add images, how to add a background. But what is so cool is once you know how to use it, you can use it for a plethora of things. For posters, for CVs, for invitations, etc. So it's really important to learn these skills, because when we have these skills, we can get better at them. And when we get better at them, we have the opportunity to leverage them. And leverage is a really key word here. I talk a lot about how to leverage social media. And I think until people have hung out in my world, they don't really get what I mean by leverage. In fact, I had someone once say to me, is there a better word than leverage? Could we use another word? Because I don't really get it. And I said, well, let me explain what leverage means. Leverage means that you use something in order to get something else, right? So you are leveraging the power of social media in order to get that job that you would love, or in order to get that client you would love, or in order to explore what the heck you would love to do, right? Some people are at a loss if they've spent a decade or 2 decades of their life looking after other people, they're at a loss as to what do I want to do with the next decade or 2 decades of my life, right? Or 3 or 4, it depends on where you are in that journey. But the key is that we do have a vision for our future, that we live by design and not by default. And same thing with social media. We don't want to be doing social media by default. We want to have a plan and a design for that strategy that we want to implement on social media. What am I using social media for? And what is the best way to leverage it to get what I would love? That's the key question you've got to ask yourself. So when I started Tech Pixies, I just wanted to help women return to work, right? That was the number one thing that I wanted to do. We have over 750 women in our VIP group coaching program, which is basically our social media management certification program. So for women who want to upskill in social media in order to consider a career in social media or embark on a career in social media, our social media management certification course is brilliant. And we've got the most amazing coaches who have taken what I built initially and developed it further and made it even better. But just knowing that you've got that ability to tap into a coach and ask a question when you get stuck, and you've got the support of a group, is just unbelievably amazing. And I've just seen our system transform lives. And the key here is learning how to leverage that network. And one of the things that I was talking about in one of the coaching calls this week was the minimum viable social media hosting plan, right? You've heard of the MVP, the minimum viable product, which is a very startup term, which means, you're starting a business and you start with a minimum viable product, right? What's the most basic thing that you could create and try and sell? It could be a workshop, right? It could be a ebook. It could be a real book, right? But maybe that's not a minimum viable product for you, right? Maybe an ebook, a free ebook is faster and cheaper for you to produce using Canva, for example. So your minimum viable product is like, what is this small thing that I can put out to the world that's going to make a big difference? Because that's really important to focus on. Creating something and getting it out to the world, and ideally creating something and getting out to the world that you charge money for, because if you're setting up a business, you do want to figure out how to make money. A lot of Tech Pixies have been using Eventbrite to run workshops. So we have an amazing Tech Pixie called Annie Soiza, and she runs a company called Align and Shine Designs. And what she does with Align and Shine Designs is she runs workshops on logo creation and branding on Eventbrite, and that is her minimum viable product. And it costs money. You have to pay to do one of her workshops, but off the back of that, she invites you to be a customer of hers, right? If you want support and help in your branding and your logo, reach out to her, right? So she says that at the end of her workshops, if you want to work with me, here's my contact details. So she's got a captive audience of people who are interested in their logo and their brand, and she's given them a great starting point to go do it themselves, but she also gives them a done-for-you option where they can work with her. So she found that the workshops were a great way to build up her mailing list and to build her know, like, and trust factor. And so that's why she does them, and she does them very regularly. And in our Facebook group on Fridays, we have a Friday Wins post. She posts her upcoming workshops so people can join in. So minimum viable product is a really cool concept. It's that you just create a product and put it out there and see if anybody buys it, right? And it can be anything, like I said, from an ebook to a workshop, or even a mini course, right? Very often you don't want to start with a signature course. Those of you in the course creation world, if you don't know the term signature course, it's your big course. It's the Mac Daddy of all of your knowledge, which is basically what the Social Media Mastery VIP group coaching program is for me. And I started out by building my Mac Daddy signature course. And I think on reflection, there's probably a lot of advantages to starting with smaller courses. But anyway, that's a podcast for another day. What I just wanted to say here is that there is a minimum viable product idea, and I want to go and take that a step further, and I want to go with the minimum viable social media posting plan. Now, I sort of casually talked about this in one of our coaching calls last week, and everyone thought it was a super great idea and thought I should do a podcast episode about it. In fact, I might even do a masterclass about it, because I think it's like a real important thing to talk about, especially in the social media space. But what is a minimum viable social media posting plan? What is it all about? Well, the key here is that you are creating the least amount of content to get the maximum amount of impact. Now, what does that mean? That means you're leveraging the network, right? So here's what we know. We know that live video does better than static pictures, and way better than stock images, and much better than kind of broadcast, kind of poster type, lots of text overlay posts, right? So live video is your number one medium. Your number two medium are things like reels and pictures of yourself or videos of yourself that have been organized and crafted in a way to sort of entertain. And TikTok really has led the way in this. And I think, what you see happening in other networks is a reflection of what started happening with TikTok. So when TikTok came out, immediately Instagram responded by creating reels, right? And now you can do reels on Facebook. So there's power in these networks trying different things, because they're always trying to capture your attention, and so they're coming up with different ways to do that. And then in doing that, you experiment with things and try different things out. So one thing that we realized when we were looking at statistics, and this is a huge part of what you need to be doing with social media, and I'll talk about that in a second. You learn social media, you implement social media, and then you reflect on what's working and what's not working, and then you adjust accordingly, right? So one of the things that we, upon reflection, realized was that reels were massively important to Instagram, and we just weren't doing them, even though we knew they were important, partly because of the amount of time it takes to do the creative for them. And then you start watching other people's reels, and you go, okay, all right, I sort of get this. So there's a couple types of reels. There's one where you can just do talking head for 1 minute and just share a piece of information, which does pretty well, actually. If you look at our statistics, those do pretty well. You don't need any fancy editing or changes. I put on a filter a couple times, and it was quite fun. But the other type of reel that was really easy to make once I figured it out was just the passing time reels. So interestingly enough, Kirsty Raper, who's one of our tech pixies, who just was interviewed by Holly Tucker, seriously, and she just launched her Reels membership with a co-pilot. I think it's awesome that they're doing it together. But one of the things that I saw Kirsty do, Kirsty was one of our students who came into the program and definitely wanted to leverage social media to create a life that she loved. And she went all in. Like, we gave her the starting point, but she went all in, and she went beyond the starting point and really became a master, especially of Reels. She became a student of Reels. And I love watching her stuff, because I learn by watching other people, and I learn by learning or applying what I learned. So one thing she did, this amazing reel, it was super cool, and we'll share it in the show notes, was she created a reel of her day. And I loved this reel. It was so great and so simple. It was like the most simple yet fun idea. So she just took these like 5 to 10 second clips of her day all day long, from having coffee to, going for a walk, to meeting a client, to sitting down with a client, etc. And I just thought it was brilliant. I absolutely thought it was brilliant. And I thought, I can do those reels. I can do reels where I'm just capturing my day. So I started creating reels about stuff I've been doing with my family. So over Easter, we went for a little walk in the Cotswolds, and I just did that. I captured like these little 2, 3, 4, 5 second clips. And then when you create a reel, you just combine them all together. And then you add some fun music to it. And it's super, super fun. And it really worked. And it's a great know, like, and trust factor thing, because Instagram, although it started out as a photo network, it really has changed to a video network. And I think there's serious power in reels, because they're short, they're sweet, they're fun to create. It's really fun to look for the music and pick the music you want. So what do I mean by minimum viable social media posting plan? Well, a big part of this is looking at what's working and doing more of that and less of the stuff that's not working. And also realizing that you don't have to post every single day, and you don't have to be on 24/7. This is a huge lesson, and I think a lot of people don't get this. you do not need to post on social media every day. Now, Stephen Bartlett, I listened to a really great interview he did recently, and it was brilliant. It really was brilliant. And he was talking about the different types of people on social media. He said, you can be a peacock or you can be a magnet. And I thought that was so great. And a peacock is someone who like shows off on social media, and then a magnet is someone who attracts people to them, right? You attract people to you. And I thought this was such a cool concept because I was like, yes, we want to be magnets, right? And he did say, and I've heard a lot of interviews with him, and I've read his book. I love his book, and I'd love to get him on the Joy Book Club. So we're working on that. So Stephen Bartlett, if you're listening to this, I also put Tech Pixies up for Dragon's Den. So, maybe I'll get to pitch to him. I'd really love to have him on board. A couple other dragons I'd love to have on board too. Anyway, what I was going to say was Stephen Bartlett in his interviews talks a lot about like being on there every day and creating content every day. And in some ways he's correct, right? But in other ways, that's not what the kind of average woman who's juggling children and elderly parents and a job and a spouse and a house has the time to do, right? So here's what you got to remember about Stephen Bartlett. He had someone following him and recording him 24/7, and he still does. So all of his content, he's got a huge content team. Now it didn't start out that way, but it did start out with just someone following around and videoing him and him speaking into a mic and a camera all the time. And he says that in his interviews, like, he just was always mic'd up, and he was always creating content. So what does the woman who has a family and younger children or children, what we've learned what I've learned from working with women of all different ages is actually the older your kids get, the more they need you. So it's not this like thing where when they're younger, they take all your attention, and suddenly they're older and they don't need you anymore. They actually need you more. And as my children are entering that phase of their life, I'm experiencing that myself. So how do we, as women, create stuff that we get out to our audience that builds the know, like, and trust factor, so that when we make an offer to them, they want to buy it because they want to be in our world, because they know that our world's going to make their world a better place, right? How do we do that? Well, I am modeling this right now because I am driving to get my car checked out, and I thought, well, I'm in the car and I will just record a podcast. Now, it's probably not going to sound perfect, but I'm doing it. In fact, if I'm being honest, I tried to do this 10 times yesterday in my office, and I had deleted every single version of it because I just wasn't in the right headspace to do it. And this morning I woke up, I'm going to a photo shoot, I've got a fresh perspective. I'm like, you know what, let's just put the phone next to me, hit the record, and just talk as if someone was sitting in the car with me and we were having a chat. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm creating content. This is a half an hour piece of content, maybe more, maybe less, that's going to now go onto social media, into our emails, onto our Buzzsprout, which is where we upload all of our podcasts, and it's going to connect with somebody. It might have connected with you. In fact, if it's connecting with you, I would love for you to email me at support@techpixies.com and let me know that it connected with you, that you gained something from it, that you learned something from it, so that it was helpful to you. So minimum viable social media posting plan. You only need to create one really good piece of content every week if you're on the minimum viable plan. Now, you can create 2 or 3 pieces of content, definitely. But what I would say is actually one of the things that we've learned is if you create a good piece of content and you get it out to the world and you stick it on your website, you embed it on your website using social media embedding tools, and you email it out to your audience, you will get traction on it and it will get seen. And in fact, what we've noticed is if you put 2 posts up on Instagram on the same day, for example, they will both struggle because the algorithm doesn't know what to show people. It gets very confused. And even if you put up a post every single day on Instagram, you will not get the engagement or the reaction to the posts that you would if you put something up and give it a day or two. So I'm a big fan of minimum viable social media posting. The other thing that happens when you do minimum viable social media posting is your content's better, right? You only have to create 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of content per week. So you're able to be a lot more thoughtful in your content creation. And you can create patterns, and you can create themes that you just revisit over and over again. And you only need like 2 to 4 themes to just repeat over and over again with different angles, different takes, right? So at Tech Pixies, we usually rotate through a couple different things. We talk about financial independence for women. We talk about learning how to use social media, leveraging social media, right? Not just learning it, but leveraging it. We talk to alumni all the time about their transformational stories, right? I just interviewed Sophie Rose about leaning into the power of her voice, and really going from someone who thought that she could be a singer-songwriter to living and breathing being a singer-songwriter. And literally at this moment, she is creating her EP, her very first album under her name, Sophie Rose. And the experience has been euphoric for her. It's been out of body, right? Because she's leaning into what she loves. But she never would have had the courage to do the promotional side of things and the live video side of things. And she says this in the podcast, without Tech Pixies. So, if you're listening to this today and you're thinking, gosh, I would love to overcome my fears of social media, and I would love to learn how to leverage social media to return to work, change careers, or start a business, then email me. Email me at support@techpixies.com. And I would love to have a chat with you and a conversation with you. And equally, if you have a friend, maybe you're an alumni of our program and you know what you living and breathing what I'm saying here, maybe share this podcast episode with them and let them know they're not alone, and let them know that there's support for them. Because it's important to me that we reach people who want that next level of confidence, because it's important. It's important for them to change their world, right? And we can only change our world externally by changing our world internally. And when you try and do something that feels challenging and hard, like posting on social media, you get a whole bunch of resilience that you never even thought you were going to get, and a whole bunch of confidence you never even thought you were going to get. So I hope this podcast has been useful for you. I hope it's given you permission to not post 24/7 or every single day. And let me just leave this last bit. You do not need to be on social media 24/7. Really, really, really important to learn this concept of batching. Now, we teach it in our strategy module in the social media management program, but the core concept is you pre-create content. So you're not just on the fly creating content, you're sort of pre-creating content, and you can pre-schedule that content. But the other thing that you're doing is you are batching your responses and your community engagement. So you give yourself time frames. For me, I go in first thing in the morning and last thing at night. It's sort of my routine. I mean, obviously I do it after my morning routine. It's not the first thing I do. I do my, when I wake up in the morning and I find my gratitude, I feel my gratitude. I get to a place where I really feel like I'm grateful for everything that I've got in my life. And then I listen to my vision statement. What does my life look like 3 years from now, as if it's already happened? And then I listen to my brain prime, which is helping me to work through anything that I may have identified as a subconscious block, and particularly as I move towards this bigger vision. And then I listen to my morning mentor, from Mary Morrissey. So I'm in her Brave Thinking Masters Plus program, and I listen to that every morning, which is amazing. And then I get out of bed, and then I start my day. But I start my day with the right mentality. And that's usually when I check. okay, what's going on in the social media world? Let me just make sure everything's been responded to, make sure I've caught up with everybody, etc. Right? And I don't do it, again, for the rest of the day. I don't sit on social media all day long. I go do the other things I need to do. I go do the coaching calls. I go do I help the team. I do the tech. I do the doing. I do the stuff that needs to get done. And then I might check again before I go to bed, just to say, okay, let's do a sweep. Is there anything that hasn't been responded to since I checked this morning? And the cool thing about building a really engaged community is very often the answers to the questions that your community has are also answered by the community. So we have 750 women in our social media mastery program, and they all answer each other's questions. And we've got women in there that have been there for 5 years, and they've got massive amounts of knowledge, and they're more than willing to share their knowledge, because when they were starting out, someone else shared their knowledge. So you can create an environment as well where, if you're using a private Facebook group, etc., that you create an environment where people help people, right? People help each other. So anyway, I hope this podcast helps you as you start to think about how you want to leverage social media. And I want to know, tell me how you want to leverage it. Send me an email, support@techpixies.com. Thanks for listening. And I hope you enjoy this series of Fly Solo podcasts.